Happiness is not a fixed state. Instead, it's something that you can actively cultivate through a series of steps. Today, I'm going to share with you 10 secrets to happiness. These secrets are backed by science and they are very achievable with small, consistent effort. Tip number one is to be clear, crystal clear, what happiness means to you. You may have heard the story about the banker and the fisherman. It's one of my favorites and it really brings this tip home. The story goes like this. A banker from Rome went on vacation to a seaside village in Italy. On the first morning, as he sipped his espresso from his balcony, he noticed that the fishermen boats that they all headed off from the harbor. About 3 hours later, before lunch, this particular boat returned. He noticed that the fisherman had these plump branzino. These are types of white fish, also known as European sea bass. And he disembarked his small vessel, tossed the fish in a sack, whistled a tune, and slowly and happily headed off. After observing the same routine for about 3 days in a row, the banker thought that he could help this poor fisherman. And so this particular morning, he scurried down from his hotel room and introduced himself to the fisherman. "I've been admiring the beautiful fish you catch," said the banker to the fisherman. "Thank you," said the fisherman. "I'm retired and my family and I, we live in a small house by the sea and I fish for a half a day and we eat them every night. You know, these branzino, they claim top dollar in the markets in Rome. I have a question for you. I noticed that you only fish for a half a day. Is there a lack of fish in the sea?" "No, there are plenty of fish," replied the fisherman. "Well, if you fish the entire day," continued the banker, "you could sell the ones you don't eat at the market. And this would generate enough money to pay additional crew. You could double your daily catch. And with this yield, you could purchase another boat. Can you imagine how many fish you would catch every day? It would be enough to purchase a truck. You could drive them into the markets and to the city. And of course, you're going to need a driver. You're going to need ice. But the city markets will pay you sufficient amount to purchase your own fleet with distributions throughout Italy." The fisherman listened patiently to the banker. "And after you build your branzino empire, you can cash out and use the money to retire. You can buy a small house by the sea and just fish a half a day for you and your family." You see, in this story, sometimes we are busy pursuing what we think we should want or may want when we probably already have it, right? Or we could achieve it in less stressful ways. So it is important to figure out your end goal, figure out what happiness truly means for you. The next tip, I think, dovetails really nicely, and that is the science of enough. You want to really focus on what is enough. Appreciate what you have instead of constantly going after the next thing and the next thing. And I've had to learn this lesson over the years. Many times I will set a goal, and as soon as I achieve that goal, I go to the next goal and the next goal, when really what I needed to do was to take a moment to enjoy the results of that goal. The other thing is that science shows that your income can boost your happiness, but only to a certain point. Typically around 75,000 to 100,000 annually in the US is what is seen as enough. After that, your happiness and your emotional well-being actually levels off. So we really want to think about what's enough so we can break that hedonic adaptation of getting something and wanting more, getting something and wanting more. We need to understand what's enough and focus on enjoying the moment instead of keeping to chase future goals. Number three is to make sure that you're being introspective and do it on a regular basis. I recently spoke with someone who told me that she had a closet filled with shoes, many of them unworn with tags for years. And when she did some introspection, she figured out that when she was young, she did not have shoes for a period of time. And so now she is just buying shoes even when she doesn't need them. Practicing introspection allows us to see that sometimes the sadness or lack that we feel on the inside, we try to salve it by putting on expensive clothing or designer things on the outside. So, what we really want to do is take time to be introspective so that you actually know what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, what actions you're taking unconsciously that could be hindering your happiness. All right, tip number 4, I think, yes, be quick to practice self forgiveness. A simple thing happened the other day. I was trying to root a tomato plant. I accidentally broke it and I was trying to root it. And then, for some strange reason, I put it in the dark and the leaves withered and it died. And I was so disappointed because I was trying to save the plant. I found that every time I would pass where the plant was, I would keep saying, that was so stupid. I was so annoyed at myself. Interestingly, had a friend told me that story, I would have said to her, okay, you learned the lesson, move along. You know, don't continue to beat up yourself for something that's simple. But many times we have trouble forgiving ourselves. So we carry burdens that we really don't need to carry. So again, treat yourself like a friend and forgive yourself and forgive yourself often. The next tip is to forgive others. This is something I also had to learn. Be very quick to forgive others. There's a quote that says, holding on to a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Many years ago, when I was a teen, I was dating someone, and my mom had taken in this young woman who was a couple of years older than I was. I saw her as family. Um, Mom took her in for so she could, achieve some opportunities. And then I found out that she was dating my boyfriend. So when I immigrated, she was dating my boyfriend. I was mad at him. I was mad at her. I was mad at her more because I saw her as family. And I realized that a decade later, this woman called me and she was so excited. She wanted to meet up and she was telling me how much she had missed me. And I realized during that conversation that I was still mad that I had let this woman live rent free in my head. And she didn't even know she was in my head. So the point is, forgive yourself, as I mentioned before, but be very quick to forgive others. All right, now that I know better, I would never give someone that much power. Um, you forgive others and you move along so you don't hold on to that negative energy. Tip number six is to have a practice of gratitude, have an attitude of gratitude. You know, your brain has trouble focusing on both lack and abundance at the same time, right? So practicing gratitude is going to put you in an abundance mindset. A study that was published in the journal Personality and Individual Difference actually found that grateful individuals reported higher levels of satisfaction and lower levels of stress and depression. Studies also show that when you keep a gratitude journal or you constantly express gratefulness, your dopamine and serotonin, these are your brain's feel good chemicals, they actually increase. Now, this practice might look as simple as in the night, at the end of the day or in the morning, you mention 3 things that you're grateful for. If you have trouble with this, play the alphabet game, and it goes like this. You start with the letter A. Maybe you have an aunt that you particularly cherish, or you had an apple that was particularly delicious that day, or it's a hot day and the air conditioning was such a blessing. You go to the letter B and C and so forth until you can find many things for which you're thankful. You will realize that so many blessings come in your life on a daily basis, but we're not always thinking about it. The other way to magnify that practice is also to add 3 things for which you're hopeful. Gratitude and hope are fuel for happiness and joy. Tip 7 is to take personal responsibility for your happiness. I would suggest that you take personal responsibility as a cornerstone of success and for your life in general. The world is not fair. Um, we have no control how and where we were born and who our parents are and certain situations we found ourselves in. But for the end result, you have to take personal responsibility so you can get where you need to go. All right. So take personal responsibility for your happiness and for your life. And you will see a major change. Decide that your happiness is indeed your moral obligation and take the necessary steps to ensure you prioritize your happiness. And again, that might look like having a happiness ritual. It might also look like staying away from negative people, unhappy people, because this can end up putting you into that situation, right? I'm fine with loving people from afar. Tip number 8 is to get professional help. I once had a friend who I believe was sad for most of her life, sad and unfortunately negative. And when I would encourage her to seek professional help, she would say to me, God will take care of it. I suggested to her perhaps God did create the therapists, the counselors, the physicians to help her. But she convinced herself that sadness was a path she had to suffer through. And unfortunately, she was sad. So protect your happiness and seek professional help. Tip 9 is to build social connection. This is a personal one for me. My husband and I, we recently relocated and we're in a place where we don't have a lot of friends. So this is something we are working on because I know the importance of it. So what we know is that humans are inherently social creatures. And so meaningful relationships provide emotional support. It provides a sense of belonging and purpose. And according to a study that was done by Harvard, and this was one of the longest studies on happiness, they found that the quality of our close relationship is the single most important predictor of long-term happiness and health. So you really want to focus on social relationship. And in fact, when you interact with people, you release more oxytocin, and this fosters feeling of trust and well-being. And not only does social bonds improve your mood and your health, but it also helps your brain's health. All right, so find ways to do this. And it might look like just prioritizing shared activity and meaningful conversation with friends and family, or you might pick up hobbies that require social interaction. The final tip is to prioritize your physical, mental, and emotional health. As a lifestyle medicine physician and coach and a physical medicine rehabilitation physician, I couldn't ignore this tip. Our minds and our bodies are interconnected. And so being physically well will affect your emotional health. So health practices like exercising regularly can improve endorphins, and these are your natural mood elevators. It can reduce your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and reduce your anxiety and stress. Sleep is important because it's critical to emotional regulation. There was one study that actually showed that poor sleep is strongly linked to depression and irritability. So you want to aim for about 7 to 9 hours. And if you need more information on sleep, I do have a playlist that talks about sleep health. Also, think about what you eat because this is linked to your emotions. So you want to look at nutrient dense diet that's packed with plants and try to avoid processed foods. Find ways to also address chronic stress. This might look like a mindfulness practice, whether it's deep breathing, meditation, journaling, which is one of my favorites. And also curb unhealthy habits. Alcohol and smoking are very important things that can negatively impact your health and your happiness. All right, so if you thought anything here that I shared was helpful, please like, share, and subscribe as I share more content for healthy aging and longevity. And look out for the next video as I'm going to share foods that can actually affect your emotional health.